Good evening. We'll call the meeting to order. If you'd please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. Sean, would you please call roll?
Deputy Mayor Baggett.
Here.
Councilmember Brown.
Here.
Councilmember DeCoursey.
Here.
Councilmember Holman.
Here.
Councilmember Pelosa.
Here.
Councilmember Trout-Manuel.
Here.
Councilmember Wells.
Here.
Thank you. We will begin this evening with board and commission reappointments. City Council to, confirm the following reappointment to the Transportation Advisory Board for a 3-year term expiring December 31st, 2020 for Pamela Gunderson. Do I have a motion? Deputy Mayor Baggett.
Thank you. I make a motion that we approve the candidate for reappointment to the Transportation Advisory Board.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Councilmember Holman.
Second.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Baggett?
Yes, we've reviewed the candidate, and she has served on the board already, so this is just a confirmation of the reappointment or a reappointment to the board.
Great. Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of Pamela Anderson being reappointed to the Transportation Advisory Board for a 3-year term expiring December 31st, 2020, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed say no. Passes. Civil Service Commission, City Council to confirm the following reappointment to the Civil Service Commission for a 6-year term to expire December 31st, 2022. That reappointment is for Heidi Harris. Do we have a motion? Councilmember Holman.
Yes, I move for the appointment of Heidi Harris to the Civil Service Commission.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Councilmember Trout-Manuel.
I second that, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Holman.
This is a reappointment. Ms. Harris has served on this in the past and filling a vital role for the civil service employees of the City of Auburn.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Passes. All right. Do we have any agenda modifications, Sean? No, Your Honor. All right. We will move on to public hearings. Tonight we have a public hearing for franchise agreement number 12-41. City Council to conduct a public hearing to receive public comments and suggestions with regard to the proposed franchise agreement number 12-41. And I believe you received a presentation at last week's study session. So there will be no staff report. Are there any questions from council? Hearing none, I will open the public hearing for franchise agreement number 12-41. Is there anyone that would like to speak to this franchise agreement? Please come forward, give your name and address for the record.
Virginia Haugen, 2503 R Street Southeast in Auburn. And because of time constraints that were my own fault, I haven't had a chance to really look at this situation. But I do hope that I've been involved in some franchise agreements only as a council member. And there was a time when I was very much against a particular contract that we signed. So I hope our council members will fully understand the contract and whether or not it will affect monetarily the general populace of the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to the franchise agreement? Hearing none, we will close the public hearing. And we will move to audience participation. This is the place on the agenda where the public is invited to speak to the City Council on any issue. Those wishing to speak are reminded to sign in on the form provided, and please limit comments to 3 minutes. Is there anyone that would like to speak? Please come forward, give your name and address for the record.
My name's Amanda Tracy. I live at 2025 Ginkgo Street Southeast. And I'm coming here today because I'm working to promote renewable energy within Auburn. I'm working with Environment Washington Research and Policy Center on that. So together, solar power and transportation electrification have the tremendous potential to transform our energy grid, clean our air, and reduce our dependence on fossil fuels, and perhaps most importantly, put the brakes on global warming. We have the opportunity now to act boldly. The public likes solar energy more than any other energy source, which makes it a great issue for engaging the public, community leaders, and local, state, and federal decision makers. A recent Pew Research Center survey found that 89% of U.S. adults favor expanding the use of solar power more than any other source, including coal. With the cost of solar and electric vehicles coming down and more people, businesses, local governments, and others seeing the benefits, we are at a critical moment for tipping the scales in favor of solar and electric vehicles. In order to prevent the worst impacts of global warming, we need to transition our energy systems away from fossil fuels rapidly. Solar energy and transportation electrification technologies are booming nationally and among the best solutions we have to put the clean energy revolution in the hands of the people. Since 2010, America's solar energy capacity has grown more than 13-fold. Now is the time to build a strong and resilient politic for clean energy and make Washington State a leader in that transition. In addition to tangible environmental and public health benefits, clean energy has already brought big economic benefits to Washington, including $375 million in solar investments, 157 solar companies, $6 billion in wind investment, and more than 3,000 wind jobs. Statewide, we have enough solar and wind capacity to provide all the electricity our state currently needs, as well as the electricity we would need if all of our vehicles were electric. In Auburn, driving within the city's borders burns 34 million gallons of imported fuel each year, and that's strictly unnecessary. We can and should be powering our vehicles and homes with homegrown energy. Auburn's small buildings alone, as detailed in the reports that I've had passed out to you, Auburn's small buildings alone could provide enough rooftop solar to power 35% of Auburn's vehicles if they were all electric. The first step to getting Auburn off fossil fuels is demonstrating the support of our community, businesses, and local leaders like yourselves. I would love to speak to each of you individually about this and would love to speak to any community members that would like to add their voice to this campaign as well. With that report, you will have a letter of support that you can add your name to. My name and my phone number on the back of those. I would love to follow up with each of you. And that's all I've got for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And Sean, I believe you received copies, correct? Okay. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? And then Nancy, you would be next. Yes.
I'm Orrin Wells, 3611 I Street Northeast, Unit 197. I am a resident of the River Manufactured Home Park, of which I know 3 of you have personal connections to, and at least 2 others have been in there enough that you know that the nature of that park is these are individual residences, and all the people that live in there live in their own homes, which they own. So it's not a trailer park that is rented, and the turnover is enormous. What I want to bring to your attention tonight, we'll first lay some groundwork. Each of you should have a copy of this before you. At the bottom, you'll see a comment that says residential customers. And I'm going to read that. Information for curbside service at single-family residences, 1 to 2 units, or mobile home parks. This is off of the city website. The link is at the bottom. By the way, there's no page 6. I messed up. The second page here, you will see a brown area down in the lower right-hand corner. This is at the intersection of 37th Street Northwest and I Street Northeast. That is the River Manufactured Home Park. And down here, you'll see that it is zoned as RMHC, Residential Manufactured Mobile Units. They're not too mobile because some of those have been in there for 40 years. The next page, page 3, is also from the city, although the top comment, which is not mine, is not from the city page. This is Auburn City Code 8.08.030. I'd like to draw your attention to the underlying part, number F, which says commercial customer includes multifamily residences, businesses, institutions, governmental agencies, and all other users of commercial type garbage. I'm going to run out of time. Holy mackerel. Okay. You guys can read through the rest of this. What brings me here tonight is the city announced in November that because our park has a master water meter that is billed as a commercial unit, that the whole park ought to be considered commercial, and therefore, beginning in January, we were all to pay commercial rates for yard waste and for the trash. There is no need for this. And I don't know whether somebody woke up one morning and said, we're leaving $1,800 a month on the table, let's take it. But it's wrong. This is a residential areas, zoned residential, and the people in there are residential individuals. Some of them are very low income. They even use the food bank every month. So to charge them an extra $6 a month for this is not right. And I hope the council will take some action to get the department responsible for this to realize they're going against their own policies here and get it returned to residential. Thank you.
Thank you. And Shelley, perhaps you could talk with Mr. Wells. Shelley is our finance director, and under her responsibilities are the solid waste collection, and so she would be happy to talk with you and get some more information so we can clear up any issues. All right, is there anyone else that would like to speak? Nancy and then Wayne, okay?
Ooh, instructions. Hi, I'm here on behalf of the committee to select the iconic piece of art for the Auburn Way location. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. Nancy Colson. I live at 1214 O Street, Northeast in Auburn. And I'm here to urge passage of Resolution 5345, which authorizes the city to contract with the artist Peter Requiem to create what we're calling the iconic art piece on Auburn Way at the location of next door to the library where Big Daddy's Drive-In was formerly. And there just a couple things, and those who were at the planning meeting got a complete presentation. A couple things, it was a pretty comprehensive project, and one of the things that I wanted to emphasize is that the decision of the committee, which included Arts Commission members and Park Board members, including Wayne Osborne, who's here, was unanimous once we saw this particular art piece. And at the Arts Commission, it was also a unanimous decision. And what we were looking for was a large-scale piece of art that would be eye-catching, both from Auburn Way, if you're driving by, or an engaging piece if you were in that area in person. And I think what Peter Requiem came up with is very iconic, which is one of the things that we had asked for, and we urge you to approve our recommendation. So, thank you.
Thank you. Wayne?
Wayne Osborne, 1806 4th Place Northeast, Auburn, 98002. I'm here in support of Resolution 5345, the iconic art. I was also on that committee that went through a large process of selecting that. I thought we had an outstanding presentation at the study session, so I hope you support the art. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? You're on.
Virginia Haugen, 2503 R Street Southeast. And I want to tell you, I haven't been here in a while, and if I overstay my welcome, too bad. First, I'm here to be nice. I got to attend. After 53 years in this city, I have never been to a more interesting, fascinating, fun event than our chamber organized at Lesko Park. My grandson is 77 years old, and he got to meet a real sergeant in the Army. He plays Army at my house all the time. We loved every minute of it. Thank you so much to the chamber, to all of the sponsors who put up money and their time, to all of the vendors, to Councilmember Pelosa for being there, Baggett for being there, Nancy Backus for being there. I don't know, was somebody else there? It was wonderful. And Bill even told me that I think we had 36 vendors. We loved it. Please bring it back. It's free. And it was great.
You're referring to the Healthy Expo,
That
right?
someone had to come to a meeting and talk about maybe a simple mistake about garbage pickup or something and how much it's going to cost them because now they're a commercial, because they're a mobile home park. One of my very best friends lives in that mobile home park, and he hasn't called me yet and told me what's going on, but he will. I don't care if it was a mistake. I know what happens when a city council doesn't want to have committee meetings anymore. These are the things that you deal with in a committee meeting. I would also like to say, and this is very tough, because I have such great respect for so many people in this room. Councilmember Pelosa, Baggett, who was over there at the park shaking hands, you are good people. But that I have to find out that it's costing a lot of money for the mayor to go to Korea. We don't get to go to Korea. That I have to find out that somebody made a mistake and somebody's getting charged too much for something that a committee meeting could have caught. I want a lot from my city council. And when my neighbor called me and told me about the childish behavior in this room one night, I was shocked. I have left a very strong message for our mayor. I assume you got it.
I received it today, yes.
If the mayor of Auburn and I want to go face to face and we have a little animosity once in a while, do I care? Hey, when our mayor walks out into public and she shakes a person's hand and she accepts their thanks for something that she just said publicly, that's okay with me. If I walk into a room and I face off with Councilmember DeCourcy and he shakes my hand and I thank him for simply being a member of the council and trying to do a good job, that's good enough for me. But I think it's time for our council members to have enough respect for the city of Auburn to behave like adults and not behave like children and squabble over where somebody gets to sit on the city council. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Please come forward, give your name and address for the record.
Yeah, I'm last. My name starts with Z. I'm Bob Zimmerman. I live at 233029 46th Place South in Auburn. Last Saturday, we had the pleasure of going to a training session for CERT volunteers. That's Community Emergency Response Team. And of course, we are anticipating an earthquake, as you all know. And in the little book that they gave us that kind of went through all the program, the first part of it was pictures of commercial collapse and residential collapse. And of course, one of my favorite subjects, propane tank laying on its side. So I would urge you to consider the rules that the industry has in addition to the code, and make that part of what's enforced and not trap gas where it can explode. Also, the fellow that was making the presentation, a guy named Ed Houston is a Seattle engineer. He's been working on seismic issues and evaluations and fixing the code since the 1970s. And after his presentation was over, I thought, well, I'll just see what he thinks about the wall deal. So I asked him, well, will this thing stand up? And he says, well, I have to know how deep the footing is and how wide it is. And I said, well, it has none. And he says, let's fall over. And I said, well, then is that a violation of code? And he says, well, absolutely. So, you know, I would have liked to have talked to him more about it, to bring more messages here about that, but he'd been speaking for 5 hours at that point, and probably an asinine subject to be discussing anyway when it's so obvious. But anyway, down in one of King 5's emergency programs, they had a former state legislature from up on the coast, and I think Joyce, that that he's doing coordination for emergency stuff, and he mentioned in there that he was in the 4th floor of the Capitol building when the Nisqually earthquake hit, and he said earthquakes are supposed to be just a little shaken. He said, I was not prepared to be bouncing up and down like I was on a trampoline, and he indicated he was bouncing up and down in the air chest high. Well, I asked the presenter the other day, the engineer, I said, well, now, when we have all these peak ground accelerations, how far can we expect this wall to move, this big 35-ton slab of concrete? And he says, that is absolutely, totally unpredictable. Looks like I'm out of time, so I hope that the mayor will announce some kind of fix for this in the State of the Union, unless she has more important things to deal with than life safety. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? All right, hearing none, we will move on to correspondence. Do we have any correspondence this evening, Sean? All right, Council Ad Hoc Committee reports. Council Ad Hoc Committee chairs may report on the status of their ad hoc council committee's progress on assigned tasks and may give their recommendation to the City Council, if any. And first, for Finance, we have Councilmember Brown.
I'll do the
all right.
report.
Councilmember Holman.
We're going to swap back and forth
All
a little
right.
bit. We reviewed the claims vouchers and the amount of $4,272,000 vouchers and wire transfers. And then we had reviewed the payroll vouchers in the amount of $2,150,000. We found no questions that drew our attention to anything out of the ordinary, and would recommend that the full council approve.
Thank you. And our second ad hoc committee is on streets and prioritization. Councilmember DeCoursey.
Thank you, Mayor. Due to my circumstances, we had to postpone the last meeting. We'll be meeting again on February 22nd.
All right, thank you. All right, we will move on to the consent agenda. All matters listed on the consent agenda are considered by the City Council to be routine and will be enacted by one motion in the form listed. Do I have a motion? Deputy Mayor Baggett.
Thank you, Your Honor. I request the council to consider approval of the consent agenda.
Thank you. Is there a second? Councilmember Holman.
Second.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Baggett.
Thank you. We have several items here on the consent agenda. It's the minutes of the February 5th, 2018 regular council meeting, the claims vouchers and payroll vouchers that Councilmember Holman spoke to, legislative services contracts with W2A and Thompson Consulting Group, Public Works Project CP 1507, which is the City Council to approve a final pay estimate for work that was performed at the Auburn Way North Preservation, and the Public Works Project CP 1605, which is to award a contract 18-04 to the low bidder for the Let's Go Park Crescent project.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Councilmember Pelosa.
I would like item D as in dog and F as in Frank pulled for further discussion.
Okay. All right, so Mr. City Attorney, do we just vote then on the items except for D and F, correct?
That would be correct.
All right. Are there any questions or comments on items A, B, C, or E? Hearing none, all those in favor of the consent agenda to include items A, B, C, and E, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Passes. All right, we will move on to item D, legislative contracts with Washington 2 Advocates and Thompson Consulting Group. Are there any questions or comments? Councilmember Pelosa.
Thank you, Mayor. A few weeks ago, we received an annual report from
Do we need to make a motion first?
Yes, please.
Sorry.
And may I suggest, since they're being pulled from the consent agenda, the two contracts should actually be voted on separately.
The Thompson Consulting and the Washington 2 Advocates?
Right. Together, they can be combined under the consent, but as a separate, it'd be single subject rule.
Okay. All right. Do we have a motion to approve the legislative service contract with Washington 2 Advocates? Councilmember Holman.
Move to approve the Washington 2A contract.
Thank you. Is there a second? Councilmember Pelosa. Thank you. All right. Councilmember Holman, would you like to give an explanation?
We have used, I'm going to have difficulty speaking as two separate entities because we use them interchangeably. But Washington 2 Advocates has been a very good advocate for the city of Washington over the last, well, for my 6 years, and they've been here before that. But whenever we are working with an issue at Olympia or in Washington, D.C., these people not only speak to issues that affect our city, but they make it. My apologies, I didn't push the button. At any rate, the Washington 2 Advocates has been a very reliable source. Again, I'm going to have a hard time speaking to separate because we pay Washington 2 Advocates and Thompson Consulting $11,000 per month is what the contract is. And it's as valuable to us. So separating the two, I'm not quite sure what the division is, but this makes for a very strong in advocating our positions both in Olympia and in Washington, D.C.
Thank you. Are there questions or comments? Councilmember Pelosa.
Thank you, Dana, for getting the issue and the impact. I'm sorry, yes. Thank you, Dana, for getting the issue and the impact data. But I still have a problem. You take page 40, I'm on page 45, you guys. Take the area 2017 capital budget advocacy. Auburn Valley YMCA, $763,000. What I would like to know, on any deliverable report, you generally get, okay, there's a dollar amount, but what did they actually do to help, because there's other people working that also,
to come up with that $763,000. As an example, did they meet with a representative in Congress? Did they meet with a senator? You know, those type of things.
So I think one thing that might be helpful is to note how we use our consultants. Every city or every government entity will use their consultants in different ways. And we use W2A and Thompson truly as consultants, yet we do our own advocacy work. So historically, with W2A and Thompson, we started using them, and this was back in the previous administration, for a single issue around the Cascade Water Alliance and the water rights around Lake Tapps. And it was decided back then that perhaps full-time consulting firm would be useful to the city for all sorts of topics year-round. So what we do is we have an on-demand, on-call, year-round access to a team of consultants regarding legislative issues, whether we're dealing with, sometimes it's something with another city, sometimes it's something at the county level, sometimes the state, sometimes at the federal level. And so I think commensurate to their services is it's generally a salary. So they're on demand. We're on the phone or on emails or on calls or meeting with them specifically over issues, working issues consistently throughout the year, as opposed to other cities might only use a consulting group during the legislative session. When they want to track bills or see something go or see something not go to provide opposition, where we're consistently working issues year-round. An example would be when the marijuana laws were passed, and we needed a lot of help making connections with the Liquor Control Board, with the state, with our legislators, and trying to ensure that as the changes were consistently being made throughout that legislation, we had our consulting and our advocacy in place. The GSA property is another one where we are consistently on top of it. Things are changing, staff is changing. We had a federal change at the administration. We needed to know what the staff changes were, who we can talk to, when we should talk to them, and how to make sure we're advocating for the best use of that property. And these are, just things that I've touched on. And so, like, specifically with the capital budget advocacy, there are things that were placed in the capital budget that are either going specifically to something in Auburn that we fully support, or something specifically that one was a nearly $500,000 grant that was in the capital budget that our Parks Department and the museum was very concerned about for historic preservation. And when the legislature last year did not pass the capital budget, that put all of that funding in a big concern with a lot of people. So we wanted to make sure we were continuing to advocate that certain things didn't fall out of the capital budget. So and then, kind of an example of how things might get worked through an issue. When the capital budget was finally passed last month, as you all remember, you heard a presentation from the assessor's office on a possible modular housing project, and that there was up to $3 million placed in the capital budget that could possibly go towards that project. Well, after it was passed, there was confusion as to whether that line item was supposed to go specifically to King County, whether it was to go directly to Valley Cities. And what happened is that there was a miscommunication at the county level between the executive's office and the assessor's office. So really, literally at a moment's notice, we had our consulting firm calling our legislators, setting up meetings, getting us into the offices of people so we could, we got even in with the governor's staff to make sure that that money that we had been working towards for that particular project was going to be secured in the capital budget for that project. And that right now looks like to be about $1.5 million, could possibly be more with other funding. So just, again, it's, you know, it's a pretty typical contract based on what other cities and organizations might use a consulting firm for. And in the past, we had a full-time staff member as well as these contracts. Now we lean on our consultants a lot for the bulk of our legislative consulting. And, you know, and I manage that contract, and, you know, our staff, you know, up and down the row here will be in contact with them quite often throughout the year.
So, could I continue?
Councilmember Pelosi.
So then I can assume, we can assume, that the $763,000, the $500,000 for Nexus Youth and Families, Valley City's Modular Home Project, $1.5 million, White River Valley Museum, almost $500,000, and then Drinking Water State Solving Fund loan, $1.4 million. That it was W2A and Thompson that brought that money to the table.
I'd say that they were a big part of it, and in making sure that we were doing the things that we could do for advocacy. Sometimes it's helping us draft a letter. Sometimes it is getting us in with the meeting with the legislator or their staff to ensure that those things kind of remain at the top of the pile for Auburn, instead of possibly getting swallowed up in some sort of other project that might come along.
Okay, then there's federal advocacy, that block. Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, 500,000, which we work around that amount every year. And I know that the National League of Cities advocates big time for the total CBDG for all cities. So they're more of a support role for that.
Well, in that one specifically, we've been working since the end of 2015 on maintaining the City of Auburn CDBG funds, because we were in danger of losing it for several reasons. There had been some missteps leading into 2015. Remember, we had the surplus funds that we needed to make sure that we were doing the things we needed to do with, and that was probably a good 18 months of work and meetings and advocacy and getting in front of HUD to make sure that they understood that cutting our funding was something that we needed to not have happen.
Are there any other questions before we go back to Councilmember Pelosi?
No, I'm not done, but.
Keep going, I've got a whole set.
Well,
So how do you want to handle that, Mayor? I don't care.
we typically see if anybody else has any questions and not just have one council member. Are there any other questions from anyone? Okay, go ahead, Councilmember Pelosi.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. I guess the next time around, I'd highly recommend that take subject A, just hypothetically A, and they work on A. If we could just have a couple sentences, okay, we worked on A and did this, you know what I mean? Because I can read the boilerplate up here, but it's not really specific to the project. So, I'm going to come back, but go ahead.
Councilmember Wales.
Shelley, I have a couple questions for you.
I've requested records for the last 6 years. The the invoices for WA2 and Thompson. And can you recall when we started with both of the agencies 6 years ago, what the cost of the contracts were for both agencies per year?
180,000.
How much?
180,000.
Okay.
It was 15,000 a month, I think is what it was.
Was it, so it was about 750 per, 7,500 per contract?
Yeah, well,
Because
it
we
was,
get it-
they broke them out. It was one contract, and then they were broken out.
Okay, like they are now?
Mhm.
Two, okay. So it was 15,000 a month.
Yes.
I remember that when we started, and your recollection is somewhat similar, Dana, that we had a full-time staff person and that we decided to not have it in the department and use continue with the expertise in DC and then use more of the expertise down in Tacoma. And we combined them and saw it as a real savings. And I have some concerns about the cost going up so high from $22,000 a month from $15,000 a month since we've made this move, and kind of the slippery slope. Do you, Shelley, have any idea, maybe cost of living increases or why it's possibly gone up so much?
I was not involved with the negotiation, but the cost, I would imagine, went up because we were asking them to do more.
Commensurate
Again.
to additional work, yes.
Yeah, and that, as Director Hinman relayed, they did come on for Cascade. Thompson Smetch came on, and they were utilizing Washington too in that work. And when we didn't have the staff person, we started increasing that contract. We used some of that staff salary savings for the contract to increase and use them more. That is my understanding.
So in a 6-year period of time, we've gone up $84,000 from, yes.
Yeah, it was probably about 4 years ago.
Okay.
There was another staff member, Director Hinman's predecessor, that worked on that contract.
So I'm having a problem with the cost that's gone up so much. And from another point of view is I feel like they advocate for things that should be, they tangentially impact Auburn, but they're not specific to Auburn, and wonder if with their expanded scope, if that's why it's increased over the period of time $64,000. So I'm wondering if the contract shouldn't be more narrowly defined. The question I have is, should we be paying, there is a benefit for having Nexus strong. There is a benefit for having the YMCA be strong. There is a benefit to our library, and I can go on and on. But is it our job as a city to hire advocacy groups for those areas and for areas such as the $400,000 that they want for the mental health hospital in Pierce County? Is that what we expect from our advocacy group?
Councilmember Holman.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm seeing lots of local issues here that have direct impact on the city of Auburn. Auburn Valley YMCA, Nexus Youth and Family, formerly AYR, Valley Cities, White River Museum, and then access back to the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund, which we had lost. I think I see good value in the money to Yes, $180,000 is a lot of money, but some of this access back to the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund is 1.3 million. It's a bit like standing on nickel or standing on dollar bills to pick up nickels. We have to speak to our needs with our federal, state, and county legislators, and they are able to do that very well. I would then think, really, I'd like to call for a question.
All right. So we've called for the question. There are no more comments on once the question has been called. Mr. City Attorney, once the question has been called, is there any additional discussion allowed?
The call for the question actually takes a vote, and the vote would be to call for the question. It would be cutting off debate, so it would require a majority vote of the council to cut off debate.
Okay. So do we need a second to call for the question, or just the motion itself?
There was typically a call for the question would then be presented to the chair for a vote.
All right. So we have a call for question on the table, which would eliminate any other discussion on the Washington 2 Advocates contract. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Let's do this by a hand, please. All those in favor, please raise your hand. We have 3, 4. All those opposed, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So we will continue. The motion failed. We will continue with the discussion on the Washington 2 Advocates contract. Are there any additional questions? Councilmember Pelosa. It was
The question
the
won.
question failed.
No.
The call for the question, it was 3, correct?
Oh, 3.
3 to 4. So the question failed. So that's why we are back to discussion.
Okay.
Councilmember Pelosa.
Thank you. Again, all I'm trying to do is get specificity on you know, they're doing a good job, but I want to show that they're earning their money by detail information against all of those numbers as an example. Next time it'll be different.
I wonder if I could just request, as far as the reporting that you're requesting, which is perfectly fine, I think it was Councilmember Holman when we had a short discussion at study session indicating that it's difficult to put a dollar value on certain things. I might even liken it to, you know, billable hours, which we don't really have. We just we pay a salary, and it's, you know, it's 24/7 access for us, which, you know, overall is a big value for as much as we lean on them for things.
I don't want to get you off in the wrong. I agree with what you're saying.
Okay.
I agree, but yeah, but so you got 763.
Mm-hmm.
We did this in support of that. That's all.
Okay.
We met with Senator Murray. We, you know, blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm.
Not on a specific date or anything like that.
Okay.
Councilmember Brown has a question.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, and I just want to say I agree with Councilman Pelosa that a little more specificity is in order. It helps this council make good decisions. I don't think that's unreasonable.
Okay. Councilmember Pelosa.
On page, let's see. Oh, Dana, what about this idea? We get monthly invoices for this both of these contracts. What if, and it would help them at the end of the 12-month period, what if they gave you a little deliverable blurb?
I can certainly check on that, yeah.
And then they can gather all this data and make their annual report a lot easier, probably. as a reference point, you know.
Councilmember Trout Manuel.
You know, I agree with what Mr. Pelosi is saying. If we get a lot of comments from our constituents saying, where's the transparency? Where's the transparency? So if we could just have a little bit of statement on each one of this, that would give us some things to come back to our constituents and say, this is how many, this is what they've done for us. You know, they did bring 765,000 into our community, and this is what they did. So it wouldn't hurt to have something for us to be able to present, to tell our constituents, instead of always saying, you know, we want the city to be more transparent.
No, completely. I guess one thing that's kind of rattling in my head, and since it's early in the year, I think we can probably get a good set of data throughout 2018 for you, is possibly just do almost our own legislative bulletin, so you can kind of see how we're working things. Okay.
Is anybody else? One more. Councilmember Pelosi.
Let's see. On the Thompson, let's see, W2A. I don't want to, we're talking about that one specifically, right? And I have all my paper on Thompson, on W2A. Let's see. Yeah, I'll find the same. On page 3, page 55, Dana, of the W2, yeah, W2A. The contact name should be changed. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay. Scribner's.
For the city contact.
Okay.
It's not spelled incorrectly, it's the wrong name.
Okay.
That's all.
Okay. Councilmember Wales.
I still have a problem with the amount of money that we spent. Oh, yes, thank you. I still have a problem with the amount of money that we've spent, but, and I just wanted to share that, and that's fine. I was hoping that we could come up with some kind of an inflation factor or whatever, but we can maybe deal with that at another time. I think that it's important that if we are going to be taking credit for hiring someone to assist with the YMCA and Nexus and Valley Cities, that we share that with the Human Services Committee so that they realize that there's a heck of a lot of money going that way, even though it may be for capital.
Okay.
Okay. The other thing that I'm concerned about is if this person or organization, I should say, is really advocating for us or advocating for the area. And I wonder if there was a conflict of interest when Tim Thompson and Associates had a fundraiser for the mayor at $500 a ticket. If that's an ethical thing or if that's just something that's not related to us contracting with someone who has that kind of a practice.
I don't.
Maybe Dan could help us with that.
I'm not. I would be hesitant to say it would be a conflict for someone to engage in that type of independent political speech if it was intertwined in a way that related to the services. It might be something you'd want to question, but I'd be hesitant to call it an unethical thing without at least some other basis.
Okay.
Councilmember West.
The only reason why I bring that up is because I know Councilmember Holman really likes full disclosure, and when we do votes on things, he'll periodically say, hey, I've got an airplane there, I want everyone to know, or I do this or that. So I just wanted to be transparent. Thank you very much.
Just as a reminder, I do not vote on these issues. Thank you. All right. Are there any more questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of approval on the Washington 2 Advocates contract, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no.
No.
Passes. We will move on to the Thompson Consulting Group contract. Is there a motion? Councilmember Pelosa.
I move for the, which one are we working on?
Thompson Consulting Group.
Okay. On the Thompson Consulting Group. That's my motion. I move that we approve, I move that we approve the Thompson Consulting contract.
Thank you. Is there a second? Councilmember DeCoursey.
I'll second the motion, Your Honor.
Thank you. Councilmember Pelosa.
I don't think we need to talk anymore about that. We've covered it. Both of these contracts are alike. I did some word checking, and there's 2 words difference that I saw.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of the Thompson Consulting Group contract, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no.
No.
Passes. All right, we will move on to item F, Public Works Project number CP 1605. City Council to award a contract number 18-04 to the lowest responsible bidder for project number CP 1605, Lescove Park Crescent Project. Do we have a motion? Councilmember Pelosa.
I move for the approval of Parks Project number CP 1605.
Is there a second? Councilmember Holman.
Second.
Thank you. Councilmember Pelosa.
The reason I pulled this thing, Darrell, was I'd like to know a little more about. I'd like a little more knowledge on the funding. You know, we got the 321 fund, 355,000. Then it says grant secured 328 fund. Is that right?
Correct.
Who did we get the grant from?
Yeah, King County Conservation Futures was the original grant.
Which one?
King County Conservation Futures.
Oh, futures, okay. You know, I think in the future, we should state that, and I thought it was some, but I wasn't sure. And then your impact fees, so, okay. The, is this construction going to have any effect on the opening of the market, the Auburn International Farmers Market?
No, it won't have any effect on that. The goal is to have, this project is basically where the bollards are now in Deals Way, so next to the spray park and along the museum. So the area that's closed off, as well as connecting it to the new community center. So there won't be any impact on her Big Daddy site from this project.
So how much funding is coming from the city? Wait a minute, I didn't say that right. From the Parks Department for this 600 and...
There's...
Oh, it's 800 and...
Yeah, so there's about park impact fees is a majority, so that's not general fund, and then there's a source of funds for since the project came in slightly over budget, that overage is being paid for out of King County Prop Levy 2 funds. So those are King County dollars that we receive every year. The original amount was, I think, REIT funding that was left over from the 8th Street project. So those are city funds, but they're not general funds. There's no general funds in it.
It doesn't, what you just said isn't identified that I can see.
Right, it says this, I noticed that too, that it here says the fund number like 321 and 328, but not what the source of those funds are. Those are in the CFP and didn't get transferred into here. I'd be happy to provide them for you.
Well, you know, in the future, for all of us, we'll always strive to find out where the line dollars are coming from. And that's important for us. So we know whether it's grant money from like futures or et cetera. Okay, and you said there's no effect on the market opening. That's cool. And the schematic is away from the market, actually.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, not, the construction is away.
That's correct.
Per this schematic.
Yeah, the goal is to have it completed by Kids Day.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, it's a great project, and it's going to really enhance Let's Go Park.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Wales.
Thank you. I'm glad to see us paying attention to safety. And I think that in the future, when you describe this, you know, the safety lighting and the safety beacons and some of those other things show our commitment to improving our existing parks as opposed to continuing to expand the park program, cleaning up and making safe what we have. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of Public Works Project number CP 1605, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Passes. Okay, we have no unfinished business or new business, so we will move to ordinances. Mr. City Attorney.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ordinance number 6677, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Auburn, Washington, amending sections 18.02.070, 18.35.020, 18.35.030, 18.35.040 of the Auburn City Code relating to, and the Auburn zoning map, creating a new open space zone district.
Thank you. Do I have a motion? Councilmember Holman.
Yes, I move for the acceptance of ordinance number 6677.
Thank you. Is there a second? Councilmember Brown.
I second that motion, Your Honor.
Thank you. Councilmember Holman.
This was discussed at length on February 20th study session, and by opening up the and change some of the maps, we'll be better able to utilize open space that was created by the new levy.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Councilmember Trout Manuel.
Did we have Muckleshoot tribe clear that little misunderstanding there was, or confusion, and when they came to the meeting?
Yes. That was cleared up, I believe, the same night.
And I wasn't sure what the problem was. I remember receiving an email, but I don't see anything in these in the document saying if that was cleared up or not.
Jeff? Oh, okay.
Is this on? Hi, my name is Alexandria Teague. I'm a Planner 2 in Community Development Public Works. You don't necessarily have a letter or an email from the Muckleshoot Indian Tribe, but I can say that during the meeting, there's twofold. During the meeting with the, one of the meetings with the Planning Commission, that issue did come up. And the issue at hand was essentially why we were applying, why we had applied a land use designation. Over some of their lands, which technically qualify as Indian lands. That's land that's within the historic reservation boundary, and lands that are owned by the tribe. And so, and then the issue was, why are we applying a zoning designation? And essentially, we applied the land use designation and we applied the zoning district in the case that, in the event that the property is no longer under their ownership. And so that was acknowledged and explained during our meetings with the Planning Commission. And in that recommendation with from the Planning Commission, they did understand that this is the reason why we're applying the zoning land use designation and the zoning district, and the Muckleshoot Indian Tribe did understand that, or the staff that I had interacted with did understand that as well.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So the understanding is that we're not going to be zoning their land?
Well, the understanding is we do apply a zoning district to their properties, but we have no jurisdiction unless it leaves their ownership.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Councilmember Trout Manuel, that's on page 79 of 122, where it says, until those circumstances change for such lands, the city regulation shall be for informational purpose only.
Not to interrupt the discussion, but just to add to what was already stated, that language was approved by the Indian tribe.
Thank you. Councilmember Wells.
On that same evening, the soda issue came up regarding enhanced potential. Has that soda issue been resolved with them?
We are still working on the soda issues with
Okay,
them.
you're working directly with the tribe?
Yes, we are.
Good.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of ordinance number 6677, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Passes.
Resolution number 5340, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Auburn, Washington, setting a public hearing to consider the vacation of real property intended for right-of-way purposes located at 1412 3rd Street Southeast within the City of Auburn, Washington.
Thank you. Yeah, you've got,
Did I pick?
6678.
Oh. Top of the page.
ordinance number 6678.
6678, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Auburn, Washington, establishing the local sales and use tax rate for local revitalization facing financing for 2018.
Thank you. Do I have a motion? Councilmember Holman.
Yes, I move for the adoption of ordinance number 6678.
Thank you. Is there a second? Deputy Mayor Baggett.
I'll second that, Your Honor.
Thank you. Councilmember Holman.
Ordinance 6678 deals with just an extension of an existing tax that has expired, and now it's time to, it'll make no difference in what people pay. It just is extending the sales tax as it now exists.
Shelley?
Correct. What this is it extends the sales tax credit that the city receives against the state tax. This isn't an additional tax or even an extension of a tax. It's just the extension of the credit that the city receives.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of ordinance number 6678, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Passes.
Now, resolution number 5340, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Auburn, Washington, setting a public hearing to consider the vacation of real property intended for right-of-way purposes located at 1412 3rd Street Southeast within the City of Auburn, Washington.
Thank you. Is there a motion? Councilmember Brown.
Yes, Mayor. I would like to move that we adopt resolution 5340.
Thank you. Is there a second? Councilmember DeCoursey.
I'll second the motion, Your Honor.
Thank you. Councilmember Brown.
Yes, this motion merely sets a opportunity for public comment on the vacation of real property intended for right-of-way purposes located on 3rd Street Southeast within the City of Auburn.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Councilmember Wales.
If we approve the vacation of this and say that it's no longer necessary for the city, what does that result in?
The property would then go back to the ownership of the persons who donated or the heirs or assigns. It would go back. There's actually a little piece of property that was acquired some years ago with when there was an intent to see if we could develop a 4th Street. That was never developed fully. The properties were never collectively contiguous to each other, so that this piece of property is isolated and it's just part of the property that was from which the property was conveyed to the city. There's actually a house built partly on this property.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of resolution number 5340, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Passes.
Resolution number 5345, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Auburn, Washington, authorizing the mayor to negotiate and execute a contract with Peter Riquan to design, fabricate, and install a public art piece into the design of Lesko Park in conformity with the iconic public art for Lesko Park art process.
Thank you. Do I have a motion? Deputy Mayor Baggett.
I make a motion that we consider for approval 5345 resolution.
Thank
we
you.
discussed
Do we
this.
have
I'm sorry.
Do we have a second? Councilmember Holman.
Second.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Baggett.
Okay. Yeah, we discussed this at our last study session at length, and it was a presentation by the Arts Commission, and we've heard a couple of other people speak tonight to this. So this is basically for the public art piece at Lesko Park.
Thank you. Do I have any questions or comments? Councilmember Pelosi.
Thank you, Mayor. Darrell, the $125,000, where is it being funded from?
Yeah, it's funded through REIT funds that have been rolled over for like 3 years from projects that we hadn't done in anticipation of this project.
From the parks. Okay.
No, it's from REIT.
REIT. Okay. So it's the
Real estate excise taxes.
REIT 1, REIT 2? One of them?
REIT 2.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Wales.
This is the first I've seen of it, and I am an art lover of sorts. My stuff is probably more crafts than it is art, but and I'm excited to see that we're going to do something big. But my question is, before tonight, the people out in the community are talking about this this project. I didn't know it was a large crow. I happen to like crows, though, too. But I know that we have our own arts competition every year where we put up projects and we let everyone vote on it, and everybody gets excited, and it breeds this understanding and love for whatever. And here's an opportunity to make a massive impact and really have some understanding. And I'm disappointed that we had the Art Commission or committee and a small group make this decision. And I would like to see the selection and education that goes along with it and the understanding of art and whatever go through our IT department and be a citywide vote.
Do you have any other questions or comments? Councilmember Trout Manuel.
You know, after I left the meeting, and I love the idea of the crow and everything, but I still have a real hard problem with the safety of it, just the design of it. I see it as being a place for kids are going to be climbing. Parents are going to allow them to just run up there, use the tail as a slide, and in our some warm weather, I have seen kids being burned by going up on a metal slide. I have a real issue with the safety and the cost that we are putting out on this piece of art. So that is just my concerns about us bringing something like that into our city.
Thank you. Are there any, Councilmember DeCoursey?
Thank you, Mayor. When I look at a project like this, and I really appreciate the presentation we had at the study session and the depth of detail that was gone into on this, but for me, I always look at the dollars. And I guess, Darrell, just asked the question, is the cost of this project comparable with what we would see of other projects and jurisdictions to do some sort of a design like this and have the impact it's supposed to have?
Well, it's the largest piece that we've ever done in Auburn. We also haven't done any for the last 3 years. in anticipation of a project of this scope. We've never done anything of this level. A lot of cities have 1% for art projects, so if you have a $10 million project, you're putting in a $100,000 piece of art. We don't have that in Auburn. We've continually had about, when I started working here, it was $1 per capita kind of, and it was $40,000. We're a lot bigger city now. But we don't really have a system in place for how much it is. We've kind of used the Les Gove campus as a whole bunch of projects that have happened there, and without public art, other than some smaller pieces internally, as this is the opportunity. But it is a much larger scope. We've done a lot of pieces more in that $35,000 to $40,000 range. This one, obviously, with the lighting and the depth and the size, is very consistent with what he's done at other sites that you saw last week at his presentation. So I think the value that we're getting is excellent. It's not a Guggenheim or something for $1 million. So I'm not questioning the amount that he's charging. The call that we did through Fort Culture stated the value of the project, and so it was understood in the get-go. And then the artists that we interviewed through the committee process were aware of. You know, they had to work in their construction costs, their art costs, their engineering costs to create the project.
Councilmember DeCoursey.
I think looking at this, and thank you for the explanation, and you mentioned a lot of jurisdictions use 1% for their art. I think it's time for us as a city to look at the percentage that we put into our art. We all need and we all like art in our city. I think some of the artists do some fantastic jobs in the work that they do, but I would like to see us put a dollar designation, percentage designation in for the future that we can look at to dedicate that to art.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Councilmember Wales.
Thank you. Thank you. I really want to say that in my heart of hearts, in order for this project to fly, I would really have liked to have seen more community involvement in this. Art is education, and if there was some way that we could take the two finals or whatever the committee thinks is great and generate the enthusiasm and whatever in a positive way through a vote or something, I think would give us a bigger bang for our buck. And then also, I like Claude's idea that I think we need to start doing some modest set-asides, whether it's 1% or whatever percent, because that kind of safeguards that. We're looking at the same thing with our roads and other things, and there's some things that we need to cherish, protect, and count on for the future. I will be voting against this because there's not enough community support. Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of resolution number 5345, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no.
No.
All right, let's do this by hand. All those in favor, please raise your hand. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. All those opposed, please raise your hand. Resolution number 5345 passes with a 4-3 vote.
Resolution number 5347, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Auburn, Washington, authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement for relinquishment and quitclaim of easement rights using a use agreement with King County for a portion of Brandon Park, all related to Brandon Park.
Thank you. Do I have a motion? Councilmember Holman.
I'll yield to our Deputy Mayor.
Deputy Mayor Baggett.
Thank you. Basically, we've had a, I'm sorry, we're making a motion. Resolution 5347.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Councilmember Holman.
Second.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Baggett.
Okay, here we go. We've had an agreement with the King County with this parcel of land, and this will create a use agreement with King County instead of a quitclaim of easement rights. So this is a relinquishment of those quitclaim rights, and in place they will create a use agreement.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Councilmember Wales.
So, Deputy Mayor Baggett, what does that mean?
It's a different kind of an arrangement. is all.
Yes.
We still have, they still have the rights to, for what the purposes are that the King County requires in relationship to Green River and the work that the Corps and the King County have done out there.
Do you want Daryl to provide?
Pardon?
Do you want Daryl to provide some explanation?
Yeah, Daryl, can you help us out here?
Yeah, what was that? What
What does it mean?
Okay, so when they built the Reddington levee from Brandon Park extending northward with the trail on top of it, a portion of the land had to have an easement for levee purposes. When you take away land that's considered parks, because that's how we received it from state parks funds originally, you have to then replace that with other park lands. It was determined originally that we were going to use that method through an easement, and now it's been determined that instead of an easement, we can just use a letter of understanding, or whatever the language is here, a usage agreement, so we don't have to get into the land replacement. We really didn't lose any land.
Okay.
We're just putting a trail on a new levee. The project's already been completed.
Yeah, I thought I saw that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of resolution number 5347, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. Passes. All right, we have now come to the place on the agenda for the mayor and city council to report on significant items associated with their appointed positions on federal, state, regional, and local organizations. And we will begin with Deputy Mayor Baggett.
Thank you, Your Honor. On Wednesday, February 14th, Valentine's Day, I, along with about 40 other regional, city, and county representatives, attended an Emergency Management Advisory Committee EMAC retreat. This retreat focused on the gap analysis and lessons learned that was performed after the Cascadia Rising Emergency Management Drill last year. As I had mentioned in earlier reports during the year, the City of Auburn Emergency Management, Auburn Police, Valley Regional Fire Authority, administrative and firefighters, and many city staff members participated in the event. And we should be very thankful that our city has such dedicated and involved personnel that are prepared to act should we be faced with a real life-threatening or life-altering event, disaster, or emergency situation. King County staff are currently gathering the results and priorities established at the retreat, and this should be published officially or formally as early as maybe next week. We will use this data and subsequent recommendations to strengthen our critical infrastructure, resource management processes, regional priorities. I won't go into all of these because there were several, but some of these priorities consist of more effective policy decision-making regarding catastrophic planning, interjurisdictional coordination and communication, such as some of the information that we have brought forward in a form of resolutions with the City of Federal Way and Kent regarding a backup plan in the event of such a disaster and we are not able to respond. The training involved develop a culture of preparedness and funding sustainability, to name just a few. More to follow as we review all of these priorities. On Saturday, February 17th, we joined our district legislators, Senator Joe Fain and Representatives Mark Hargrove and Pat Sullivan, for a town hall meeting in Kent over at the Golden Steer Restaurant. The meeting was very well attended, standing room only as a matter of fact, and we had constituents there from Auburn, Kent, Maple Valley, and Covington, among others, and covered topics including the proposed carbon tax, gun control, and the safety of our children and families with recent events. Public school funding, mental health, the opioid crisis, effects of Sound Transit 3, and the effects on property taxes and possible future tax relief that may begin as early as next year. Some of you may have already received your tax bills for this year, so, or I should say from last year, and they're sizable. So hopefully there'll be some relief out there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Pelosa.
Thank you, Mayor. I was in a conference call for the Safe Energy Leadership Alliance. The acronym is SELA. It's an advocacy formed group for safe oil and coal transport, and they advocate for new energies, as was discussed earlier about new energy. The meeting was held in Ferndale, Washington, at the Lumi Casino Silver Reef. So I wasn't playing cards or anything. I was on a conference call here at City Hall. The big thing about this alliance, of course, is transportation of oil, and there's big concerns of a major oil spill in the Salish Sea in the San Juan de Fuca Strait. There's been a 9% increase of oil traffic via ship in that area. Regarding coal export, the Fraser-Surrey dock proposal at the city of Westminster, they will be providing environmental permits, and the courts are supporting any permits that are let. So it's good to have coalition groups supporting these type of oil and coal. It's in the news almost every day, and so that's what democracy is all about, is coalition groups fighting for a cause. Then I attended the Metropolitan Solid Waste Management Advisory Committee, and they had election of officers for 2018. The chair is Penny Sweet. She's a Kirkland council member, and they elected a vice chair, Linda Knight, from the Renton Public Works staff. There's going to be a change. There's going to be a change in the solid waste self-haul rules in the future for recycling. They're going to have solid waste staff engage with haulers when they come into a transfer station to recycle in the proper designated bins. Iron goes in this, not in the paper, you know. So they, some people have trouble with iron going in a paper bin, I guess. So. But anyway, it'll pay off because you don't want to contaminate, that's the word they use, steel in a paper bin and vice versa, because that just costs more money for everybody. And then regarding the Algona transfer station, which all of us supported, rather than having a transfer station in the city of Auburn, they have King County has hired HJR Construction to contract the new facility in Algona. And also hazardous waste, there will be an increase in rates, and that's under review. So that's the good news. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Trout Manuel.
On February 7th, I attended my first meeting for the Regional Water Quality Committee. First off, we elected a new Sound City Association chair, who is John Wright from Lake Forest Park. And Leanne Geyer from Pacific is our vice chair. Then the other members are Penny Sweet from Kirtland, Ben Sun Wong from Mercer Island, Conrad Lee from Bellevue, Sherry Winstead from Shortline, and myself. We covered the agenda that they were going to be presenting, and then we adjourned and we went into the King County Council. And that was very interesting because our little friend, the little German or Russian man that's always there, he was very upset because the chair of this committee decided to make the public questions at the end of the meeting. And did he put on a show? But Mr. Zimmerman, okay. But it was very interesting to see and a little intimidating because it's a big dais full of council members. They talked about the West Point treatment plant, that they had problems back in 2017. They talked a lot about what they're planning on doing. There's 3 of these little booklets that I had to read and be on top of it. So if I was to go over the whole thing that we talked about, it'd take me hours. But it was very interesting. I'm looking forward to serving on this committee and representing the city of Auburn. Then after that, on St. Valentine's, Nexus had their Valentine's breakfast, which was very well attended. Our deputy mayor got up and read a poem, which he had the whole place in tears. It touched a lot of people's homes. It touched me because it represented me as well. But what I thought was very interesting is a young 10-year-old boy getting up and bringing his jar of money that he has collected. He did this last year as well, brought all of his pennies, and this time he brought a jar full of quarters and nickels and dimes, and he had over $700 on that. Then he also brought another jar, and he challenged all of us to start collecting our money. They asked him what was his goal that he wanted to reach, and he said he wants to earn $5 million. So that is his goal. But it touches me to see young kids that are very concerned and have a lot of, what's the feeling? Compassion, empathy for the people in the city of Auburn, our homeless people, our homeless youth and everything. So he's a little example that each one of us as adults should take in. Then after that, then I went to a Sound City Association orientation. It was really nice to hear our board get up there and talk about the importance of being a member, being part of Sound City Association, and letting you folks know that you have a good bunch of people here representing the region for our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Wales.
Thank you, Your Honor. I don't really have a report, but I want to dovetail with what Councilmember Trout Manuel said, that we need to look at the example and the heart of our young people, especially those that are in the bus in Florida, trying to make a difference with their legislature, as the legislature took a vote even before the kids could get there so that they didn't have to face the heat. But again, our future leaders, we've got great people out there, and our kids, and we should be proud. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Holman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On February 1st, I attended the Puget Sound Regional Council's Growth Management Policy Board, which I'm a member, and for the last 6 months, we have been revising Vision 2040. As the name implies, pardon me, Growth Management Policy Board concerns itself with preserving rural land and increasing density in urban space. So a lot of our discussion as we're revising Vision 2040 to make it Vision 2050 is centering around something we're calling centers discussion. Now, they're manufacturing industrial centers. Kent has one of those, and Pacific and Sumner have joined together. They have one of those. And urban centers. Auburn has an urban center. This becomes important in the allocations of funds that we get from the federal government. It comes down to the federal government, to the state, to the county, and sometimes directly to the cities. And how you are scored is based on your center's designation. We have been in discussions and debate for the last 6 months with Snohomish, King, Pierce, and Kitsap counties over the concept of creating a new type of center in Vision 2050, being a military base. And we, as a committee, voted not to accept a military center as its own standalone, feeling that a federal reservation has access to its own pool of monies from the federal government, but to recognize the county with which that military base lies in and allow them to apply the funding that they get towards mitigating some of the influences of a large base. So we voted down the military centers, and Pierce County was advocating for it very strongly, but as sometimes happens in government caucuses, the Pierce County lost on that one. Then on February 8th, I attended the Seattle-King County Economic Development Council, of which I'm a member. As the name implies, Seattle-King County Economic Development. What we have been working on in that committee is to dissolve Seattle-King County EDC and stand it up as a regional coalition of Snohomish, King County, Pierce County, and the major cities within those 3 counties. Pierce County declined to join this. Snohomish County, King County have agreed, and the city of Tacoma have agreed. So now there will be a broader economic development council for this region to attract trade into our area of the world. We hope to convince Pierce County to come and join us at a later date when they see the effectiveness of the move.
Thank you. Councilmember Brown.
Yes, I'd like to report on an economic development project that I've been working on that's very significant to our city, our region, and our state. I was appointed late last year to the governor's Choose Washington NMA Council, NMA standing for New Market Airplane or New Midsize Airplane, but we can also think of it as the 797. Boeing is in the process of deciding whether to proceed on this new airplane program. It's a clean sheet airplane program, and we're wanting to make sure that we're prepared to make the case for Washington State being the place to build that airplane. On that council, which is being headed up by Brian Bonlander, the head of Washington Department of Commerce, we also have the 3 county executives, Pierce, King, and Snohomish, SPIA, the Engineers Union, and the machinists are on that, along with the Aerospace Futures Alliance, which is the industry association for primarily the subcontracting community in aerospace. There are about 750 different businesses in 30 of the 39 counties across the state. In addition to that, we have economic development folks from across the state that are participating in this. we have secured the services of the Teal Group and Richard Abalafia, who's the preeminent aerospace analyst and economist, to conduct a competitiveness study which we believe will show by all objective standards using transparent and public data that this is indeed the right place for the Boeing company to build that next airplane. But again, that's a decision that Boeing will make. I believe that they'll be making a decision whether to proceed with that airplane sometime in June or July, and then subsequent to that, they will decide where they're going to build that airplane. Again, this is very significant for our regional economy, so we're working hard to make the case for Washington State, and we'll have lots of jobs right here at the Auburn Fabrication Division based on that work that we'll be doing if we can be successful. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember DeCoursey.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one item really quick. At last month's Regional Transit Committee meeting, I was honored to be selected as the chair of our Sound Cities Association caucus and vice chair of the RTC. And the reason for saying that is because now we have an opportunity to work even closer with the King County Council member, Claudia Balducci, who is the chair of the Regional Transit Committee, helping set agendas, looking at priorities, and looking at conditions that affect not only all of King County, but definitely affect ourselves in the city of Auburn. So I'll be working diligently with her to make sure that we attack our issues that are here in Auburn. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. On Monday, February 5th, I attended Don Dotson's retirement from the Auburn School District. He is a former Auburn Police Department officer and commissioned still through, or was commissioned through the Auburn Police Department, but was an employee of the Auburn School District. So I want to say congratulations and best of luck to Don Dotson on his retirement. Next day, the 6th, met with King County Director of Elections, Julie Wise, as she is very interested in locating a second ballot box in the city of Auburn. So she came in for us to discuss the best location for a second box, which will be very advantageous to the voters in the Auburn area. And the place that we spoke about with the most preference was at the 15th Street Park and Ride, because there is a significant amount of traffic on 15th every day and an opportunity for those who are on transit to be able to drop their ballots off. So we'll see how quickly that comes to fruition, but she was very excited to be here to talk about that, and I was very excited to hear her say that because of the voter turnouts, it was an expected opportunity for us. On the 13th of February, so last week, I was in Washington, D.C., and happened to be there not only with Director Hinman, Director of Administration Hinman, but also Dr. Stephen Anderson from Multi-Care Emergency Department. And we were there for an award ceremony, but the next 2 days we spent on the Hill. And we met with Congressman Denny Heck, Congressman Derek Kilmer. We met with Patty Murray's staff, Senator Patty Murray's staff, and we met with Senator Marie Cantwell and her staff. And the topics of those, and by the way, these meetings, very quickly, I might add, were scheduled via Tim Thompson from Thompson Consulting and Tony Williams from Washington 2 Advocates. So just another piece of the work that they do for us. And all of the people that work in both Thompson and Washington 2 Advocates have typically spent time in one of the D.C. offices for either a representative or a senator, or at the very least at the state level. And so that's how those relationships are built. That's how we have access to the senators and representatives when we need it. It's because of those relationships, and that's part of what we pay for in that contract, is those relationships that have been built over the years and the expertise of our consultants. Anyway, speaking in each one of those offices, I was there to talk about behavioral health and homelessness, and the fact that we are so underfunded in the state of Washington. You've heard me say it before. We are number 48 in the nation when it comes to resources and funding for behavioral health. And we know that that is one of the most prevalent causes of homelessness. And until we start to deal with those issues, we are never going to solve the issue of homelessness. So we went in talking about our READY program and the fact that READY is an award-winning program and that we have recently translated it into Spanish. We are looking at how the READY program, Real Emergency Aid Depends on You, which is really a 1-hour first aid course similar to CPR, if you will, for behavioral health. It teaches people how to be safe if there is someone in crisis that they are near until first responders can arrive. And that class, that course has been very well received. In fact, as I mentioned, it is award-winning through the American Medical Association. And we were proud to share that information in those meetings and ask how we can help in the fight that's necessary to provide additional resources. And then that evening, sadly, there was the shooting in Parkland, Florida. And the next day, we had a meeting with Congressman Reichert. And it would have been very, very easy to go in and try and... Do you have an issue, Councilmember Wales?
No, I was just pleased that he would see it.
Okay. We went in not talking about gun safety or gun regulations, but again, the need for behavioral health and how we need to focus on how do we heal. And gun control seems to be a non-starter for so many politicians that I would prefer to work on something that can have bipartisan support. And we volunteered our efforts and anything that we can do here locally to help further the cause and to provide the most necessary funding. We are also going to be holding a town hall meeting similar to the one we held on heroin and opioids back in June. We are going to be holding one on behavioral health. We will be planning that after next week's State of the City address. We have the State of the City next Tuesday night, a week from tonight, starting at 5:30 at the Auburn Avenue Theater. It is open to the public. We will provide an overview of what we have been doing in the past year and what we plan on doing in the upcoming year, show the highlights, the lowlights, and take some questions as well as audience participation via polling on questions. So we will hope to see many of you in the audience. I don't know if it's going to be streamed live. I can't see Jason back there to know whether that's taking place, and Dana has left. But we would encourage you to come and join in on our State of the City address, 5:30 next Tuesday, the 27th of March at the Auburn Avenue Theater. And with that, Mr. City Attorney, do we have need for a closed or executive session?
We do not, Your Honor.
Thank you. We are adjourned.